Okay, finally. That's not too bad for us, only 7 minutes or so. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to join on this rather bleak and dreary Tuesday morning. Haven't seen one of those for a while. As Richard kindly introduced, this is week 12 of Leads from Your Living Room. Today, we're going to look at dispelling SEO myths. Now, you'll be thankful to know that if you've come to one of my SEO talks before that we've done with Communicator, obviously previously, prior to them becoming Spotler, you'll be happy to know that this isn't a replica of that presentation. And part of the reason why we wanted to create it as leading with SEO myths is because some of the most common questions that we actually get after the talks aren't so much around the process, but they're actually around very, very specific issues to do with SEO. That get very sort of niche within it in itself. So what I want to do is just flag up some of the more common ones that we've come across, seek to address them and address them with sort of case studies with data and sort of bits that we sort of tried and tested over the years to get results. So to kick it off, who are Session Media? Who are Ben B and Ben A. So on the right hand side is Ben Alfred, I'm the one that's speaking today, the one in the rather sort of tired jacket there. And on the left hand side is Ben Brown. We're both directors of Session Media. Bit of history about us. We met at the University of Portsmouth. Now, I do challenge this a little bit. I'm pretty convinced I met Ben a number of times at college because we have mutual circles, but he insisted that wasn't the case. So we've just agreed to go with the University of Portsmouth. Our mutual interests include marketing, and that ends about there. We are very, very different people, but of course we get on incredibly well. And thankfully, we have a very useful common interest in sort of marketing and business and things like that. Between us, we've been in search engine marketing, so more specifically SEO and PPC for the last 10 years or so. And around about 2 years ago, Ben started Session Media and I joined him a couple of months later. So we're a fairly new company. We're growing relatively quickly and we are a B2B search engine marketing specifically. We're based in Guildford, and here's some of my contact information if you do wish to get in touch with me after this. I haven't actually told the rest of our team that their pictures will be plastered all over this presentation, so I'm sure they'll be watching this back now on a recording and be absolutely delighted that I've put their faces on here. We're an agile team of 6. We're due to be 7 or 8 in the coming months or so, obviously pending the situation that we're currently in. And you can find us more commonly across LinkedIn, I must say. We recently started a podcast because, well, everyone else has just started one. And we're slowly sort of getting to grips with Instagram as well. More recently, one of our campaigns was nominated for the Drum Search Award, and I'll take you through this campaign towards the end of the presentation as well. So to kick it off and just to manage some form of expectation, what will you actually be learning today? So although we'll be running through a variety of different myths, the key things that I think you'll get out of are actually what parts of SEO matter more. Of course, we've all got budgets, we've all got limited resources. So I want to give you guys more of an education around which are the parts of the SEO process you should be putting that resource in to get best bang for your buck, as it were. How can SEO lean on the creative as well? So typically, whenever we speak with other marketing people, even SEOs in some respects, a lot of the conversation is very much around keywords and HTML, websites and code and things like that. But actually, there's quite a creative side to SEO where if you get it right, it can be very profitable at the end. So I want to run through a couple of instances where we've been quite creative with our SEO-driven results out the other side. And finally, the last point just touches on the first point in a bit more depth. Where should you be investing your SEO budget? There's over 200 different ranking factors to do with Google alone. So which are the bits that are going to move your site the quickest? And of course, which are the keywords that are going to be most profitable and things like that. So just having a look at the agenda, I had sort of built this presentation out to sort of be 20-30 minutes or so. I think if I speak more than 30 minutes, I'll end up putting myself to sleep. So I will do my utmost best to try and keep quite tight with the timings. And of course, we'll open it to some audience Q&A towards the end as well. And we might have a few little surprises at the end for you guys as well that do stick around. So, okay, to kick it all off, let's just make sure we're all completely on the same page. When we talk about SEO, search engine optimization, we are talking about everything that is below the Google ads. So whenever you type in a particular keyword in Google, typically you'll have a range of 3 to 4 listings that sit above the organic listings, and these are the Google ads. So, and you'll notice that with the small little ad icon in the corner. I'm very sure this isn't news to anyone, but I just want to make sure that we're all talking about the same type of listing here. If we scroll down the page, then this is typically what a more of an organic search result looks like. So we've got the featured snippet at the top, which are becoming more and more popular. Then we've got 2 or 3 traditional listings, and we've got a people also ask snippet, and then we have the remaining sort of 5 or 6 more traditional listings as well. So following the theme from Google Ads to SEO, I thought I'd kick it off with myth number 1. And funnily enough, this is actually something that we're asked quite a lot as to whether improving your Google Ads can directly improve your organic SEO. And of course, this is a complete myth. Google has 2 very different models for Google Ads and for SEO. They're 2 completely different teams, and so they should be treated as such. So by improving our paid search, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see an increase in our organic search. And some of the more common questions that will come to us at the end are, my Google Ads campaign is doing really well, and I've seen my Google SEO perform really well at the same time. And again, this is media correlation does not imply causation scenario we have here. In saying that, where we can use our Google Ads or our paid search is we can actually test run or trial run some of our SEO campaigns through Google Ads. And what I mean by this is we can, if we've identified a particular keyword that we think would be worth putting an SEO campaign behind and running for a couple of months, we can actually plug it into our Google Ads campaign to understand whether people actually click on that particular keyword, whether these people actually lead to customers out the other side or leads. And alongside this, we can also split test things like title and descriptions and things like that. So actually, we can use Google Ads data to almost supercharge our SEO in the sense of we can give it a bit of a test run. So we find a keyword that we think is great for SEO. Let's run it for a couple of weeks in our Google Ads, in our paid search, to actually see whether people would find us through this particular keyword, actually click on our ad and actually convert out the other side as well. So Google Ads can be used to trial run our SEO, but one does not directly lead to an impact on the other. So myth number 2, I had actually written this to say SEO takes weeks to see the results, but I think it's quite common now. SEO, most people know that it's more of a long-term game, but what I'm finding more and more is that this is almost overstated to the point where people are anticipating it to take years and years and years before they'll see anything out the other side, and it actually becomes a determinant. It actually becomes a blocker to them actually putting a foot down, actually taking action on their SEO and actually doing anything about it. So some of the things we need to consider when we pick particular keyword in a particular market is looking at things such as the authority of the particular keyword. So you can jump onto a piece of software like Ahrefs and Moz who do have sort of free trials available to understand what the domain rating of some of your competitors are. So domain rating is merely a figure that's pumped out the other side that looks at the quantity and the quality of the referring domains that are pointing back to your site, and we'll come on to this in a little bit more detail further down. But by and large, if your domain rating is higher than a lot of your competitors, you're broadly seen as more of an authority in your space. If you've got a lower domain rating, again, you're broadly seen as less an authority compared to some of your competitors. So it's a good benchmark to just use with your competitors, but also to understand how competitive your market is. If you were to plug in your keyword into a Google search result, what sort of domains are ranking for it? If you've got things like the government site, the NHS, the Telegraph, really strong sites ranking in those top positions, which might mean that it be far too difficult keyword to try and rank top for. And also, what is the cost per click? Going back to our Google Ads scenario, if the cost per click is pushing sort of 20, 30, 40 pounds per click, we know that that market is probably quite competitive, but in turn is probably quite a valuable one to go after as well. And finally, how much relevance does a keyword have with your site? If I started a trampoline website and sold trampolines, 8-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot trampolines, in-ground trampolines, if I was to then try and rank for 16-foot trampolines and build out a whole page around 16-foot trampolines, the chances are I'll probably be able to rank for that quicker than if I was just a standard e-commerce site, for example, that wanted to also sell 16-foot trampolines, but also sold board games, climbing frames, things like that. So Google and other search engines, they build relevancy with your site. If you've got 100 words of copy talking about a particular subject, then they'll associate those particular keywords more so with you than maybe a competitor that is far broader in what it offers. And a good example is we started working with an air compressor company, and we found one of their longer tail keywords. They actually offered this particular type of air compressor but didn't have a page around it. So we built out a relatively long form page for it. And lo and behold, we actually hit top spot for that in 2 months. And this was a high intent page, high intent keyword. So we know people typing in this particular keyword were looking to buy this type of air compressor. So it was a really good, almost quick win. And I hate using that word in SEO, but it really was. And we found that this page was ranking #1 after 2 months. Not the most common thing in the world, but it is doable. So don't be deterred by how long SEO might be before you can see the results. So myth number 3, I don't know if this is really so much of a myth anymore. Certainly in the last few years, we know that speed is becoming more and more important, and things like user experience are having more of a weight put behind them. But I couldn't create an SEO presentation and not mention something about speed. So myth number 3, users will happily wait for your site to load. Of course, this is not the case. So in 2018, our website load speed actually became a ranking signal for mobile searches as well. So it's always been a ranking signal for desktop, but Google's kind of merged towards mobile, sort of tied in with this evolution of, this was a pretty big algorithm, evolution, as I just said. And in 2018, we're now looking at mobile speed. What they are quite coy about is really saying what that speed should be. What's quick for one person might not necessarily be quick for another person. So one of the difficulties is, us understanding, okay, we know speed is of importance and things like that, but if I'm a video company or if I'm a photographer and I've got a website that's filled with my portfolio with videos, with imagery and things like that, of course my pages are going to be far heavier than a site that isn't a photography or video site that doesn't necessarily have all these assets sitting on it and slowing it down in particular. So whenever we work with different sites, as a rule of thumb, we try and aim for a 4-second load speed. And of course, load speed can mean different things to different people. The best way to understand what your site speed is to go on to page speed insights. So pop that into Google, would be the first listing. And Google's been quite good to us in the sense of, as they've evolved their algorithm to encompass more of the technical makeup of a website, they've given a little bit more insight as to how to go about measuring these different factors. So with page speed insights, you can plug in a particular URL, for instance, your homepage, and Google will spit out a variety of different speed metrics, including things like time to first byte, time to meaningful paint, time to content paint. So what you can do is start to build a picture of where the speed deficiencies are in your site. So typically what we might do is, if we have a site of 30 pages, being very considerate, we have 5 key sales pages. These are the 5 pages that we plug into page speed insights because they're the ones that actually make us money out the other side and understand which parts of it are actually slowing it down. So you'll tend to see patterns where, for example, of those 5 speed metrics, 4 of them are performing quite well, and then 1 of them is slowing you down. So you know that you need to work on improving your time to first byte, for example, which means showing the website copy more so than maybe some of the other JavaScript or things like that that may be prominent further down the page. So plug into page speed insights and have a look to see where your speed deficiency are and work with your developer to try and get this as quick as possible. Some of the more common things are things like heavy images and overuse of JavaScript and things like that. Bring it down right to the bare bones and, essentially be quite aggressive with the sense of, do you really need this asset on the site? What value does it offer? And sort of following that practice all the way through will certainly help increase your load speed. So myth number 4, title, meta, and alt tags matter most. Now, I'd be interested to know what percentage of people actually do believe this or don't believe this. And the reason why I've put this one in particular is because it's quite common that this is one of the questions that we get pitched to quite a lot, is talking about sort of alt tags and meta tags and title tags. One of the first talks we did with Communicator a year or two ago, I was sat with someone, an audience member, of course, and she had essentially said that someone had tipped her off, and I use that in quotation marks, that alt tags were the next kind of big thing, quotation marks again, that Google are now looking at. So she had invested tens of thousands into essentially recreating alt tags across her old site, uploading these onto the site. And this was a site of thousands and thousands of pages. And essentially had just done this task. So I was asking about what sort of effect she can hope to see out the other side in X amount of time. And quite, sort of had to be quite honest in the sense of saying, of course, these things do matter, but they have very small input into the overall picture of SEO. And typically what I told her, and I tell everyone else, is as a blanket rule of thumb, the more control you have, the less the impact it has on your SEO. And this is because Google wants to take away from sort of manipulative practice, yours or I's attempt to game the system, as it were. So the more we can do from our side in that respect, the more control it gives us to, try those manipulative practices and things like that. So Google are sort of growing more and more to having less reliance on the user impacting their own SEO. Though in saying this, we always advise site-wide best practices. So this would be things such as including the primary keyword or keywords in the title tags. So one of the tasks we do when we take on a new client is essentially exporting the whole site, a good few hundred pages, and then mapping a primary keyword for each of those particular pages, and then recreating a title tag, a meta tag, and an alt tag around it, as well as header tags, so H1s, H2s, and then we can be confident knowing that every single page is targeting its own particular keyword, and that we won't have multiple pages trying to compete for the same keyword in that sense. So one of the first tasks you should really do when you take a new site or with your own site is export the whole thing and then understand and map out which page is targeting which particular primary keyword and list of 2 or 3 secondary keywords. Again, we touched on this in myth number 1, but a very simple task of identifying whether we think a title and meta copy will actually convert is by using Google Ads, sticking some budget behind actually bidding on this keyword and creating the title and the meta copy that we want to have in our SEO actually in our Google Ads, and just seeing if people click on it and whether those people that do click on it actually lead to customers. We had one good case in which we worked with an e-commerce supplier in the funeral market, and for some of their core product pages, whenever I'd recreate the meta copy, Google just wouldn't take it. And Google now is starting to take more and more copy from the particular page itself, more so than what you actually put into Yoast or into Shopify or something like that. So it was getting a little bit frustrating. Of course, these are sales pages. I want to have my own sales copy. So ironically, what we did was we actually did this process. So we actually ran a Google Ads campaign for no more than a week and put in some title and meta copy that we wanted to use across the SEO. Picked the best performing one. We only tested 2 different variants. And what I did was actually put that meta copy into the, that description into the meta copy of this key sales page. And Google liked it, it kept it there. And this was relatively aggressive sales copy. It was talking about the price of the product. It was talking about delivery, shipping time, something that you don't tend to see in SEO meta copy. But it was written as though it was Google Ads description copy. And what I noticed was other brands started following suit as well. So whereas I'd put sort of templates from 40 quid, free delivery, dispatched in 36 hours within the SEO bits, they started following suit, and Google actually kept that. It didn't change it with what it thought was best. So what we do now as a rule of thumb is we'll recreate for all of our e-commerce clients the meta copy to be quite sales focused. So we know, again, anyone that clicks on this particular link in a Google search result, they already know, they already know to expect what the price is going to be, the delivery, the shipping, things like that. So again, it kind of puts in that almost like a qualifier before that person clicks as well. And out the other side, we started actually seeing them convert far better on that page as well. So title and meta copy is really good to implement kind of site-wide, and it's good to keep split testing and updating and things like that. Looking at the specific situation, if you've had delivery impacted for some of your businesses in regards to, you can't quite offer the same level of service as you might have done before the pandemic, it might just be worth putting that into meta description just to alleviate any concerns or just to manage expectation for users that do click. And then finally, I touched upon it, but using just a single primary keyword for a single image on a particular page. Don't listen if you've got if you've got 4 images on one page, don't optimize every single one with the same primary keyword, because Google, it's called keyword cannibalization, and Google just won't know which image to pick. Select one image, put your keyword as the alt tag, and then label the other images as something else, and you'll see those images start to appear in the image search. So myth number 5, keyword volume trumps everything. And a little surprisingly, this is still quite a common theme that runs through. And I think it's largely because of, with SEO, with SEO comes a lot of buzzwords such as content and keywords and volumes and site speed, all these sort of things. I think it's easy to get lost in translation about the role keyword volume plays in your SEO campaigns. So one thing you need to consider is actually the intent of the keyword before the volume. And what I mean by that is, can you specifically categorize what the user wants from a website by just looking at the specific keyword? So a good example here for Spotler is, for instance, you might think that they'd want to rank for something like marketing automation software. So the simplest trick we can do is put marketing automation software into Google and just see what the results look like. So at the top here, obviously we've got our ads, so we'll ignore that. As we scroll down the page, you'll notice a common theme within each of these different titles. So right at the top, you've got a HubSpot, 11 best marketing automation software tools. Go further down, 23 marketing automation tools, the best marketing automation software for 2020, 34 marketing automation tools, best marketing automation software 2020 reviews and pricing. Then you've got a Wikipedia, and then you sort of finish with your ads. So what do we notice about these results here? 80% of them are all informational. So i.e. they're providing information about other marketing automation software products, but they're not specifically listing their own marketing automation software product. And this has stemmed from the fact that Google has used millions and millions and millions of searches over the years to understand that when a user types in marketing automation software, they don't want to necessarily be served with the product right away. In some cases they do, which is why you'll see 1 or 2 instances of a marketing automation software service page actually ranking for that. But by and large, you'll notice that it's made up of review pages. And this is because their data has said to them that a user typing this particular keyword in wants to see reviews, they want to see comments, they want to see best of lists, they want to have comparison tables side by side so that they can make an informed decision before actually going to that service page. So one of the best things you can do is, and it's a trick that takes 3 seconds, is if you feel like you've got a keyword that has enough volume, that looks about a good fit for your business or for a particular page, plug it into Google and just see what the intent is. Do you see your competitors ranking for this particular keyword, and next to that, actually their service page is ranking for that keyword? Or are you seeing something in this case where you've got HubSpot listing their 11 best pieces of software for that particular keyword? So it's the easiest thing to get wrong, but the easiest thing to get right as well. And all it takes is plugging that keyword into Google and just looking at what is ranking on the first page. None of those listings are there by accident. They're there because Google's algorithm that's evolved over the years has basically pointed them to say people want to see information when typing this keyword. So very important task to do, and always make sure the intent is right before running off and building a campaign around it. So myth number 6, you must create a new page for each new keyword. Now, if we rewind back to sort of 2011, 2012, this was very much the case, and this was very much the popular thing to do amongst the SEO industry, amongst many websites. We'll still take on a website now in which we can still see this practice where we've got each slight longer tail variation of a keyword has its own particular page. And all it does now is cannibalize one another. So that phrase I used earlier, so Google doesn't know which page to rank for a specific keyword. So in the end, it ends up diminishing both of them and no one wins out of it. So our goal here is to essentially group keywords and existing articles with the same intent within the same content piece. And studies time and time again, they continue to show that although having more words on a specific piece of content doesn't lead directly to higher rankings, Google does tend to favor this long form content. And this tends to be because the more words you have written in a specific web page, the more queries you can answer in one place. So the more sort of longer tail searches you can find solutions for. And this is great for the user because they're not having to jump around different parts of your site to try and gouge information on similar products. It's all there in one place. A good example of this is an article written by Flawless Lashes, who are an eyelash manufacturer. Now, what they did was they created a blog post merely talking about how long eyelashes take to grow back. This particular post was very relevant to their industry. They sell false eyelashes, strip lashes, things like that. So someone typing in how long do eyelashes take to grow back, you could argue probably in the industry or in the market looking for eyelashes, right? So they created over 1,000 words of content, which, if I'm being completely honest, is still relatively thin. You want to try and push that to 3,000 if you can. They had 1,000 words of content. They use scientific language where needed to actually explain this process. So they got this all verified. And some of the phrases I still couldn't pronounce, to be quite honest with you. But Google likes scientific language where it's needed. Don't, if you feel like you should include it, include it. Don't be too worried about putting users off. Google has something called NLP, which is natural language processing, and it understands that if you're talking about a very scientific or very technical issue or keyword, they're expecting to see those technical keywords. And again, we work with a couple of VoIP suppliers where this is very much the case, where we work with technical writers that know what they're writing about. They use a specific language, and again, Google looks more favorably on this. So for lack of better phrase, don't necessarily dumb down, in quotation marks, your page if you feel like it's not needed. Use that scientific language where it's relevant. And again, on this page, it answers common questions throughout. And you'll notice just by looking at this snapshot, and you can find this in ahrefs.com, that this one post ranks for 766 different keywords and brings in an average of 1,000 visitors every single month. And you'll notice as well, some of you that have been doing SEO in the past, that there's no direct links pointing back to this site, which again is quite uncommon because you usually need backlinks to really supercharge your SEO. But the page just answers the query so well, and everything kind of aligned in which this was ranking number one, or still does rank number one for a number of different terms. And it just shows that this one page has just over 1,000 words of content or so, ranks for 766 keywords. So what you want to try and do is group them as best you can. And this was one of the tasks we did with Spotler, or Communicators they previously were. So what we noticed was that there were 300 plus different blog articles, and of these 300 articles, around about 95% or so hadn't actually driven any organic traffic. And of course, this was because they're used for email reasons, they're used for different marketing activity. But once that marketing activity had finished and, sort of the years had gone on, these pages were just sort of sitting dormant and weren't really doing anything. So one of the best examples that we got out of this was we identified that a number of their pages were targeting phrases around cold calling or sales calling, things like that. But these pages had sort of 300-400 words each or so. So what we did was we did keyword research across these 4 or so different articles and identified that each of them were ranking very poorly for these sort of terms. So they were sitting sort of page 5, page 6 for cold calling tips, cold calling script, B2B cold calling. But they were all competing against each other. You had page A competing with page B, and page B is competing with page C. And in the end, Google just doesn't know which one to take, so it ignores all of them. Keyword cannibalization again. So what we did a task where we decided to select one page and we merged all the content from all 4 articles into one power page, as it were, and then redirected all of these 4 articles to this power page. Then we added a bit of fresh copy to bring it up to speed. So we wrote it, some of these articles were written in 2016, and some of the techniques had evolved to 2019 when we first created this. So the copy was fresh, it was new, we added some new images, we added a very clear step-by-step. We added very defined headers throughout, so H2s. We broke it up nicely. And what we actually found was, again, we didn't do any link building for this particular page. And this wasn't, although we were collating these pages as part of the process of cutting down the site and trying to make the existing copy work harder for us, we actually found that they started ranking on page 1 for cold calling, the actual keyword itself. And alongside, you had some really big hitters, you got which.co.uk just above. So this was a real win, and this jumped up to being one of the most popular pages, unsurprisingly, because of the sheer number of searches that it drives every month. So, 4,000 plus. And of course, cold calling, this is a keyword that's very relevant to Communicator or Spotler, as it is now. And so this was a real win. Of course, you go to find it now because of the Spotler migration. Hasn't quite caught up yet. But it just showed that, merging all these pieces of copy into one power page, as it were, that are targeting very similar terms in regards to the intent, actually we've got more bang for our bucks. So whereas we had 4 pieces sort of lounging around page 5, page 6, merging them into one page, refreshing a bit of the copy and re-indexing it, actually saw it jump up to page 1 over the course of June to October or so. And that was a real big win, and it kind of showed the power of actually doing this task and why it's well worth the time as well. So myth number 7, another one that comes up quite a lot is I've got Yoast, so therefore my SEO is done, tick the box type thing. And again, Yoast is there as a guide. It's not there to do your SEO. So it's there to, again, kind of give you those best practices that we spoke about with the title and the meta stuff a couple of myths back. So use it just as that, use it as a guide. It's something that you can configure yourself, bear that in mind. So, the items that Yoast say are great don't necessarily mean that they're great now, especially if the app hasn't been updated in X amount of months or whatnot. This was built by developers, of course, they've got an SEO head on, but SEO evolves quite a lot. And so you shouldn't take these things as absolute gospel. So all we kind of say is use it as a guide, but just because you use it doesn't mean that your site is necessarily going to rank on this alone. And it certainly doesn't mean that Google will look more favorably on this specific content. And a really good example is 2 of my sites here, or 2 pages, 2 different sites. On the left-hand side, this one ranks number 1 for its target keyword. And it's a high intent keyword. People that hit this page tend to convert and buy out the other side. The scenario on the right hand side, this is one that currently sits on page 4, doesn't rank for the target keyword. But if you were to take those away and have a look at the traffic light system of Yoast, you wouldn't be able to say which one ranks number 1 and which one doesn't rank. And again, this just kind of goes to show that just because you tick all the boxes in Yoast book doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to rank, but it's there to be used as a guide and certainly plays its part. Okay, so coming on to the final myth now. So myth number 8, backlinks don't matter anymore. And this is something that's actually become more prevalent more recently. And I still see it over LinkedIn myself. We recently saw a guy that actually filmed himself. He claimed to be an SEO expert and claimed that he didn't need backlinks to rank a site. I've shown you a few instances where that isn't the case, but you do have other parts play sort of behind the scenes with that. And we would never kick off an SEO campaign with at least having some backlink activity in that. So if you're working with a current SEO agency and they haven't mentioned anything to do with this, I would certainly raise it with them and ask what their strategy is around backlinks and acquiring links and things like that. So just to kick it off, what do we actually mean by a backlink, just to make sure we're on the same page again? So a backlink is any third-party website that hyperlinks to your website or to a particular page on your website. So if, for example, at bbc.co.uk use some of the data that we'd created, they would cite us as a source and put a link back to Session Media, for example. I don't know. Now, Google use these as an endorsement. They use them as a vote of confidence. And broadly speaking, the greater the quantity and the quality of the backlinks you have, your website tends to be more authoritative. So we were talking about that domain rating right at the start of HRS. The greater the quantity, the greater the quality of all the links pointing back to you, the higher your score is going to be, and the more authoritative you'll be seen above and beyond your competitors. And every single SEO campaign should have some backlink activity. I know I've said that, but I can't reiterate it enough. So I'm going to take you through some of the examples in which we've used backlinks to achieve rankings out the other side. But before I go on to that, again, the data shows as well, just to back this up, that the higher the number of referring domains you have pointing back to your site, the greater the number of keywords that you'll rank for, and thus the more search traffic you'll bring in. But really do focus on the quality domains. So the domains that are within your industry that have a higher domain rating than you, or your tabloids, your national press, things like that, your telegraphs, your daily mails, they all have very, very strong domain ratings and are very strong authorities in the eyes of Google and other search engines. So the very first one we did for, of course, Communicator back then was we identified that the consumer decision-making process was previously a 5-step process. No one had really done or evolved the process too much in the last few years or so. So we felt we could create something better, bring it more to the modern times, and encompass other digital marketing activity within this. So we created this super long infographic, and I believe if you type in human decision making process, it should be ranking number 3. So you can take a look at it. This 7-step process that encompassed all these different factors in a pretty cool infographic. And then what we did was we emailed different marketing sites, business sites, software sites, and said, look, we've evolved this process, this new 7-step process. Do you want to feature it on your site? And what would happen is not everyone, if you can aim for sort of a 5% hit rate or so, you've done pretty well. But you'll get these sites that will actually create some copy around this particular infographic. You might be able to give them a press release or some support copy or something like that, but they'll include a link back to your particular page. So in this instance, this was just some of the links we got pointing back to it. I think we hit 25 or 30 for this particular infographic, this particular page. Martech was obviously a very, very strong one, and now we've actually got that relationship with Martech that we've managed to get placements for other clients within in this publication as well. And as you can see, it's a very, very strong site. But the process is they link to us within their copy of their site. We get a number of these, as I said, sort of 25, 30 or so. And what you'll find is that this will actually move that particular keyword you've identified on that page up the rankings. And as long as you've done your due diligence, you've researched it properly, you've written very good copy on the site, what you should find is that this will jump your organic sessions, it will lead to an increase in new users. And in Communicator's case, this was the second most visited page on the site prior to migration, that was anyway. So it was a very, very good win for us, and that was year on year. Bear in mind that these guys were sort of 20, 30% down when we started working with them, and we ended up sort of going to plus 50% in organic sessions. Another case, we worked with a video production company, a local one based in Surrey. They wanted to rank for a keyword that was Hampshire related, so someone that would type in sort of video services in Hampshire. So with this, we had to pivot our strategy slightly. And if you're trying to rank for a local keyword, and by local, I mean it features either the name of a place or a city in it, then you really want to focus on, of course, you can get some top tier press, that'd be really, really good, but focus on the local blogs, the local publishers. So for instance, in our case, we needed to get like the Portsmouth News and sort of surrounding blogs that were operating in the Portsmouth, in the Hampshire area. And what we did was, they're a video production company, so we created it was called Hollywood on Your Doorstep, and it featured an infographic of the top grossing films that had scenes that were based within Surrey and Hampshire, as it were. So you'll notice there, you've got the likes of Gladiator, Beauty and the Beast, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. You've got actually the minute that it's featured at, and also how much it grossed as well. So a pretty cool infographic. A lot of people that probably live in these areas, some will probably be aware of it, but some certainly weren't. And we actually got a call from BBC Surrey that loved it so much they wanted to feature us on the radio. So one morning we went down with one of the owners, and he had a 7-minute segment talking about their company, the campaign. And although there's no direct SEO benefit out of this, you can't imagine the good it does for their brand awareness. So a really, really good kind of additional win that we got for them. We saw this keyword jump to number 2 in the space of a few months. It was relatively competitive, but the links we got were incredibly strong. And so sort of within 4 or 5 months, they're ranking at number 2 for that. Most importantly, they doubled the number of inbound leads. Their site previously wasn't much of a lead generator, and they sort of get odd ones here and there. And they were sort of consistently getting more and more through the months, which is really, really positive. We had an insurance client. Now, I think they'd forgive me for saying that insurance isn't the most exciting brand to work in within the marketing space. So what we did was, with this, we needed to rank their restricted covenant sort of product or service page. Now, of course, this is a very niche topic area. It's not very newsworthy. It's not very much in the news, or you don't read too much around this particular product. But what we found was quite popular was people are looking for things around first-time buyers, buying a house for the first time. This is something that's quite topical and something that journalists and other press write about quite a lot. So we created an infographic which was 9 lesser known things to look for when buying a house, and we mentioned about the restricted covenant that you'd probably need, or at least be made aware of it. And again, this did really well. So here's a handful of links. So we got into the likes of The Express and Reader's Digest, but you'll notice how relevant these links are. So you've got Just Property, What Mortgage, Today's Conveyancer, really, really good links for this very, very small insurance company. And we managed to pop them to number 1 for this particular keyword. Again, most importantly, it increased their inbound leads by about 30%. And I believe they're still holding number 1 for this keyword as well. So, ever since we've been in Jan 2020, they've held top spot for that. And it's a very high valued product for them as well. And then finally, this was the campaign that we've been nominated for the Drum Search Award for. So this was a campaign we did for CBD Standards, and CBD Standards, they offer CBD accreditation and sort of shoulder things like that. Again, quite a niche area within the space. It's very popular, but this is in the education space. It's in the online learning, which, as you can imagine now, is very, very popular. So we needed to find something that's quite newsworthy that we could get into sort of top tier press. And by and large, what we did was we created this microsite. So it was called the Unique E-Learning League. And what we did was we scoured Udemy, which is a sort of an online video training website, and found the top 10 weirdest courses that had grossed the most amount of revenue, and basically listed them 1 to 10. So we had a leaderboard, and then if you clicked on one of the numbers on the side, it would tell you a little bit about the course, number of students, how much it generated, the standard price. You could actually go to the course if you wanted to. But of course, this gave us a number of different hooks and angles to pitch this into. So we had obviously online training, education. You'll notice number 2 there, selfie masterclass. We could actually pitch it into likes of sort of vanity fashion magazines, things like that. You've got dance floor confidence there, which is a bit sort of gimmicky, another sort of hook that we could pitch journalists with, but it gave us more sort of avenues to go down. And because of that, we got in some really, really top tier press, Martech series, Classy, one of the top, one of the world leading online sort of charity platforms. Don't usually take sort of pitch requests, but they loved it, so they featured it, as well as a host of others as well, and some sort of local press. You've got the Westmoreland Gazette there as well. Most importantly, one of the key objectives of CBD was they wanted to sort of crack the US market, and out the other side of this, we saw nearly 1,000% jump in US organic traffic, which actually led us on to an increase 32% in revenue, and the ROI taking away our agency fees and things like that was over 1,000% as well. So it's a really, really good win, and that's why we put it forward for the Drum Search Award, of which we should find out next week as to whether we've won that or not. So fingers crossed. And then finally, we are coming to the end. I promise I'll probably run over my 30 minutes by quite some way, and I do apologise. This is just how do we package up SEO. So one of the more common things we come across is that sometimes marketing managers don't really know, when they're trying to get budget for it or something, they don't really know how to package it up, because there's a lot of different items that go with it by and large. So when we look at SEO, here are sort of the 3 things that we break it up into. So we have technical, content, and link building. So by kicking off with technical, this is looking at the technical makeup of the site. So anything to do with how Google sort of crawls and indexes it. A really, really good tool for you guys to jump into if you haven't done so already is Google Search Console. So Google Search Console, if you haven't got it set up with your domain, then get it set up, and this will give you a whole host of information about how Google can actually see your site, which might look very different to how your eye could see it out the other side. So get on that. It's a really, really good free tool, of course. And things to consider, we touched on it at the start, but really consider your page size. Does the image really need to be that big? If it's hampering your load speed, then try and compress it. Try and get it down as much as you can, whilst obviously still retain that quality. And JavaScript as well. We all like to sort of see things move and do flashy things on the site, but if it's causing the speed to be upwards of sort of 8 or 9 seconds, then do we really need it? Is it that important for the user that we might actually be stopping a load of users visiting our site for the first time? So we have content. So this, of course, looks at sort of the physical on page of the site. So the actual words, the HTML, the images, things to sort of look at. Again, you can use Google Search Console to understand what keywords are people actually typing in and how are they finding your site. Google's really good at, even if you're ranking on page 10, they'll show you a keyword in which they showed you on page 10 for, so you can say, this might be a good keyword to target, and I can see how many people have searched for it over 1 month, 3 months, 16-month period, if you wish. And then going back to the content grouping task, if we've got pages that are all targeting similar keywords, can we consolidate them into one power piece and push that forward with our SEO efforts as well? And then finally, the link building. This is the bit that really supercharges your SEO performance. So when we build something out, try and have an idea of what sort of publications you want to be featured in, what sort of assets are newsworthy. Some of the things we've had some good success with is when we're at the preliminary stages of creating a campaign for a particular client, we'll actually reach out to a handful of journalists to say, look, is this actually of interest to you? Or we're creating this, is there anything that you would want to see in it that would increase our opportunity of actually having it featured in your publication? We've actually had some come back and sort of say, okay, I like the sound of this. If you could get UK figures in sort of February 2020 or something, that'd be a big bonus for us. Sort of things like that. It can just help steer your campaign to make sure you hit the money. In addition, we've got some really good wins out of using Twitter as well, and actually finding journalists that are searching for particular stories on Twitter, giving them a mention, kind of saying, look, we've got this, are you interested? And we've actually got quite a lot of links via reaching out to people on Twitter as well. You get quite a lot of bloggers on there and things like that. So it's a very underutilized tool, and it's now part of our processes when we go out to link build as well. So I think that's me. I do apologise that I've probably run over a little bit here, and I hope I haven't sort of put you all to sleep. But I'm open to sort of any Q&A, and specifically for you guys as well. We're doing something a bit different. So we're actually running a tailored workshop, and as well as a few other prizes. So if you jump on after all this to session-media.com/surprise, fill in the form, you'll be entered into a prize draw to win sort of a tailored workshop by both Ben and I within the next week or so, I think. And of course, you've got my email there if you need anything outside of this. In regards to SEO, it won't help your SEO. We use LinkedIn very much as more sort of brand awareness, and it's good to drive referral traffic. So if you sort of create something in LinkedIn and link off back to your site, then there's a good chance you'll probably capture a sort of a handful of visitors that will put people onto your site. But if you're looking to rank, if you create a piece of copy that's 3,000, 4,000 words, you want to have that on your own site, because then you can actually start appearing for a range of different keywords. So I would say any sort of important long form piece of copy, put it on your own site and keep LinkedIn more as as like an information tool, I guess, or as a tool to drive users from LinkedIn to your site, but not for SEO purposes. Yeah, that's cool. Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Cool. Awesome.